She asked me one night, right in front of our friends at dinner, "Why don't you trust me anymore?" And she said it with that practiced little laugh. The one she used when she wanted everyone to think I was the unreasonable one. The table went quiet for a second. Forks paused mid-air, and she looked around like she was performing on a stage. She thought the question would corner me, force me to defend myself, make me look guilty of something I never did. But all I did was smile, slow, calm, and tired, and say, "Because you forgot your phone in his car." That was the truth, and she didn't know I had it. If you like stories like this, subscribe for more. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain anything. I just let the weight of those words sit there, heavy enough that even the waiter stopped mid-step. Her face cracked for half a second, just long enough for me to know she understood exactly what I meant. Then she tried to recover with a dismissive shrug. "He's being dramatic," she told them, rolling her eyes like I was some jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife having a life outside the marriage. The worst part? A few months ago, I might have believed her. I used to give her every benefit of every doubt, thinking trust was something you reinforced by staying calm. But trust is not a suicide pact, and she had been chipping away at mine piece by piece until there was barely anything left. The night I found out, it wasn't because I snooped or searched or tracked her. I wasn't checking her texts or reading her emails or interrogating her about where she'd been. None of that. I trusted her enough not to do any of that, until the universe decided to hand me the truth without me even asking. It started on a Thursday morning. She came home late the night before, claiming she had been at some after-work thing with her team. She smelled like a bar, but not like a bar she'd usually go to. More like a cigar lounge mixed with men's cologne. I didn't say anything. I just kissed her on the forehead, told her good night, and let her fall asleep without a single question. When she left for work the next morning, I got into my truck, started the engine, and watched my phone try to connect to Bluetooth. Except this time, a different device popped up on the screen. It wasn't mine. There it was, her phone connected to a car that wasn't ours. Car I didn't recognize. And the name of that Bluetooth device? His name. The guy she swore was just someone from the office. The coworker she said was basically married to his job. The man she teased me for being paranoid about. But I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't anything except suddenly, brutally aware. At first I thought maybe she'd gotten a ride home from someone, no big deal. So I opened the connection history, and there it was, a full night of data. Routes, timestamps, stops, pauses. 2 hours spent in a quiet residential street on the far side of town. Not a bar, not a restaurant, not anything she'd told me. Just a neighborhood neither of us had a reason to be in. The logs didn't lie. You can't argue with a vehicle's memory. And the thing that hit me hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was how easy it all unfolded in front of me. I didn't dig. I didn't chase. I didn't question. All I did was turn on my truck and watch the truth appear on a screen. I spent that whole day silent. Not cold. Not angry. Just quiet in a way that felt foreign even to me. When she texted me asking if I wanted to meet her for dinner with our friends, I said yes, because part of me wanted to see how far she'd go. Maybe that was cruel. Maybe that was human. But something inside me needed to hear what she'd say when she didn't know the truth was already sitting in my pocket. At dinner she was glowing, laughing, exaggerating stories to impress the table, touching my arm as if we were the picture-perfect couple. And then she asked that question, loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to make me the villain. "Why don't you trust me anymore?" She expected me to crumble. She expected me to defend myself. She expected me to protect her reputation like I always had. Instead, I smiled. Not the polite kind. The kind that says the game is over. "Because you forgot your phone in his car." Her hand froze around her wine glass. Her friends stared. And she knew, she absolutely knew, that everything was about to change. When the words left my mouth, she didn't react the way people expect innocent people to react. There was no confusion, no shock, no "what are you talking about?" Instead, there was this quick flicker, fear mixed with calculation, like someone trying to decide which lie to push first. But she couldn't form anything fast enough, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't in control of the narrative. Her best friend, Kelly, was sitting to my right, and I felt her stiffen. She glanced at my wife with wide eyes, silently asking, "Is he serious?" My wife didn't look back at her. She didn't look at me either. Her gaze went straight to the tablecloth, like the pattern might offer her an escape route. She finally muttered, "Can we not do this here?" The irony, of course, was that she was the one who dragged it into public. She was the one who played victim, who needed the audience. Now she wanted privacy. I didn't answer her. The silence became its own creature, stretching across the table, pressing down on everyone until even the waiter set the glasses down quietly, as if stepping into a storm. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud and sloppy. I was something else, cold, still, clear. I could hear my own breathing more than her voice. She finally whispered, "We'll talk at home." But that wasn't going to happen. I was done having conversations behind closed doors where she could twist things, cry at the right moment, turn the story, so I ended up apologizing for something she caused. "Not tonight. Not anymore." Her friend Mark cleared his throat like he wanted to cut the tension, but he didn't dare open his mouth. He'd seen us argue before, but this wasn't an argument. This was truth landing on the table between us like a heavy ring of keys, the kind that opens doors you'd rather stay shut. She shifted in her seat, finally daring to look at me. "You're misunderstanding something," she said softly, but her voice had a tremor, and she couldn't keep eye contact for more than a second. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded loosely, giving her room to build whatever excuse she was working on. Watching her scrape together a lie was almost pitiful. Almost. "Whose car was it then?" I asked calmly. She blinked. Once. Twice. "What car?" she said. And that was the moment everyone at the table understood she was caught. If she had been innocent, she would have had an answer, a name, a place. Instead, she had nothing but the oldest trick in the book. Pretend the evidence doesn't exist. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I didn't need to. I just pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the Bluetooth history, and slid it across the table. No dramatic reveal. No flourish. Just simple, undeniable truth glowing from a screen anyone could read. Her name, his car, hours connected, route logs, timestamps, stillness at one address for 1 hour and 43 minutes. Then movement again. All of it automatically saved. All of it recorded without either of them knowing. She stared at the screen for a long time. Too long. The color drained from her face slowly, like watching warm water swirl out of a bathtub. She didn't touch the phone. She didn't push it away. She didn't grab it to explain anything. She just stared, jaw tightening, fingers trembling at her sides. Her friends tried not to look, but they couldn't help it. Curiosity is stronger than politeness, and she knew it. She felt their eyes crawling up her neck, their judgment pressing into her shoulders. She whispered, "This isn't what it looks like." I gave a small nod. "Okay, then tell me what it looks like." She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Failure. There was nothing she could say because the truth had been written by a machine that didn't care about feelings, excuses, or stories. Technology doesn't lie. People do. The silence around us grew heavier until finally she snapped. "Why are you doing this?" she hissed. "Why would you humiliate me like this?" That was when something inside me clicked. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got exposed. She was sorry the act fell apart. "I'm not humiliating you," I said quietly. "Your choices did that." She flinched like the words hit her physically. And for a moment I almost felt sympathy. That's the curse of loving someone who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you. You always have a residual softness, even when you shouldn't. But sympathy doesn't rebuild trust. It doesn't erase lies. It doesn't bring back the version of myself I used to be. She grabbed the phone then, finally scrolling through the logs as if she could find a flaw, some glitch she could exploit. But everything was accurate down to the minute. It even showed the audio connections, the way her phone switched to his car speakers automatically the moment she got in. That was the final blow. She whispered, "Please don't do this here." Her voice cracked. Her eyes glistened. The performance was beginning. But I wasn't the same man who used to fall for her tears. I wasn't playing in her theater anymore. I leaned in slightly, lowered my voice so only she could hear me, and said, "Then you shouldn't have started this here." And the look she gave me, fear, regret, realization, told me she finally understood one thing. I wasn't going home with her tonight. When I stood up from that table, I didn't storm off or make a scene. I just placed my napkin down with the same calm I'd use if I were finishing a normal dinner. And for some reason that calmness terrified her more than any explosion ever could. She reached for my arm as if she could physically anchor me in place. But I moved before she touched me. I didn't want her hand on me. Not out of anger, but because something between us had snapped cleanly, permanently, like a rope stretched too far for too long. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. I could hear her chair scrape against the floor, could hear her whisper, "Wait. Please just wait." But I didn't stop. I stepped into the cool night air and let the door close behind me, shutting out the stunned stares and her desperate breathing. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the silence settle, letting the truth breathe in a way it never had inside our home. I could see our reflection in the restaurant window, me outside in the cold, her inside with the lies. For the first time, the picture made sense. I didn't go to my truck right away. I just walked down the street slowly, hands in my pockets, listening to my footsteps. It felt like the first honest sound I'd heard in months. I reached the corner by the time she came running out after me, heels clattering unevenly on the pavement. She'd followed me without her coat, shaking slightly in the wind. "Please stop," she said. But her voice wasn't commanding anymore. It was small, unsteady, a version of her voice I used to soften for, back when I believed tears meant remorse. I didn't stop walking. She jogged a few steps to catch up. "Can we talk like adults?" she pleaded. "Can you just let me explain?" Explanations. That was her favorite currency. Explanations that twisted timelines, erased details, blamed misunderstandings, and ended with me apologizing for not trusting her enough. But she had run out of explanations the moment the Bluetooth logs appeared on that screen. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. It was just flat, final. She hated that tone. She always told me silence was manipulative. Funny how she never saw the manipulation in her own noise. "You're overreacting," she said, grabbing my sleeve. "I told you I got a ride home last night because I didn't feel well. I didn't want to drive." "You didn't get a ride home," I replied. "You spent 2 hours in a neighborhood with him, then came home smelling like his cologne." She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words never formed. Instead she said, "You're taking this out of context." Context, another one of her favorite shields. I stopped walking then, because something inside me wanted to hear what kind of context she could possibly build around sitting in another man's parked car for nearly 2 hours. "Okay," I said quietly, "give me the context." She froze, surprised I'd actually asked. Then she looked away, crushing her lip between her teeth like she always did before lying. "We just talked," she whispered. "I was upset about work. He was giving me advice." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she actually thought that excuse still held weight. "You talked," I repeated. "In his car. For 2 hours. In the dark. After midnight." "Yes," she insisted weakly. "Yes, that's all." "So why not tell me?" I asked. "Why hide it? Why lie?" She swallowed hard. "Because you get jealous." That was when I realized we weren't living in the same reality anymore. In her version, she was the misunderstood woman and I was the insecure husband whose suspicions created the very situations he feared. In my version, the real one, her actions created the distance, not my reactions. I didn't say any of that out loud, though. There was no point. I turned and kept walking toward my truck. She followed again, footsteps frantic. "I swear nothing happened," she said. "I promise you." Promises. Another empty currency. She had spent so long repeating promises that meant nothing. She actually believed they still mattered. "If nothing happened," I said, "why did you delete your messages with him?" She froze like I'd struck her. She didn't know I'd seen that too. Not because I searched, because I noticed gaps, missing threads, conversations cut short with no explanation. Silence on nights she claimed she was working late. She stumbled for a response. I didn't want to upset you, she whispered. It amazed me how she could lie with such sincerity, how she could reshape betrayal into protection. Deleting evidence isn't protecting me, I said. It's protecting you. Her eyes filled with tears then. Real tears or performance tears, I couldn't tell anymore. She reached for me again, but I stepped back, and her hand hovered in the air between us like a bridge that had finally collapsed. Can we go home? She asked quietly. Please, let's just go home and talk. I'm not going home, I said. Her breath caught. Where are you going? Somewhere you can't spin this, I answered. She blinked rapidly. Are you leaving me? I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally realized something simple and devastating. I had left her months ago. Not physically, but silently. Each time she lied, each time she belittled me, each time she made me feel like my instincts were flaws instead of signals. She grabbed my arm again. Harder this time. You can't walk away, she said. Not like this. I already did, I replied. She shook her head like a child refusing reality. No, you love me. You always said. I cut her off gently. I loved a version of you that didn't exist anymore. And when I said that, her face changed completely. Not angry, not defensive, just broken. Because the truth wasn't that she lost my trust. It was that she lost my heart long before tonight, and this was simply the first time I admitted it out loud. I walked past her with the kind of clarity a man feels only when the last thread finally snaps. She didn't chase me this time. She stood on the sidewalk behind me, breathing unevenly, arms wrapped around herself like the cold was finally sinking in. Maybe it wasn't the weather. Maybe it was the realization that the story she'd been playing in her head, where I was the jealous husband and she was the misunderstood wife, had collapsed the moment truth replaced the script. I got into my truck and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, watching her through the windshield. She wasn't crying yet. She was doing that thing where she stared at the ground like she could rewind the night, as if wishing hard enough could pull the truth back into the shadows. But the truth doesn't go back. It only moves forward. I started the engine, and she lifted her head sharply, taking a step toward the truck, her lips parting like she wanted to say something that might change everything. But she didn't speak. She knew there was nothing left to say that wouldn't sound like a plea or a lie. I drove away, giving her one last look in the rearview mirror, small, shivering, alone in a way I had felt for far too long. The drive wasn't long, but it felt like a lifetime stretched out in front of me, a road with no more detours of denial. I didn't go home. I didn't go to a hotel. I drove to the only place that felt neutral, the parking lot near the lake where I used to clear my head before life got complicated, before trust turned into a guessing game. I parked near the water, rolled down the window, and listened to the night sounds. For the first time in months, I wasn't analyzing anything. I wasn't trying to read between lines or second-guess myself. I wasn't wondering what lie she'd tell next or what truth she'd bury deeper. I was just breathing. My phone buzzed, then again, and again, call after call, message after message. I didn't open a single one. I just watched the notifications stack up until the screen dimmed. I don't know how long I sat there before another car pulled into the lot. Small, blue, familiar. Her car. Of course she found me. She always knew where I went when I needed space. She pulled up beside me, not fast or frantic, but slow, careful, as if approaching something fragile. She stepped out and walked to my passenger door, tapping the window softly. I didn't unlock it. She tried again. I still didn't move. So she went around to the driver's side, standing a few feet away, arms crossed, tears streaking down her cheeks. Please, she said through the glass. Just listen. After a long moment, I unlocked the door. Not for her, but because I didn't want to keep sitting behind a barrier like we were strangers yelling through walls. She opened it gently and slid into the seat, wrapping her arms around herself as if the cold inside the truck was worse than the cold outside. I made mistakes, she started immediately, voice trembling. But it wasn't what you think. I stayed quiet. She shifted in her seat. Okay, maybe it was stupid. Maybe I shouldn't have deleted messages. Maybe I shouldn't have asked him for a ride. But I never meant to hurt you. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The same woman I married, the same woman who used to laugh in her sleep, the woman I once believed would never lie to me. And all I saw was someone who wasn't fighting for love, but for control of the story. You already hurt me, I said softly. She wiped at her eyes. I was lonely, she whispered. We were growing apart. I didn't feel seen anymore. That was the part she always held on to, the explanation she used whenever she crossed a line. And talking to him made me feel better. He listened. The way she said it, like being listened to, excused everything, made something inside me harden. So instead of talking to me, I said, you sat in his car for hours. She nodded faintly, ashamed but still trying to stretch the truth to make herself fit inside a sympathetic frame. I didn't want to burden you, she murmured. You've been stressed with work. I didn't want to add more. You didn't want to add more, I repeated. So you added this instead. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I didn't sleep with him, she whispered. I swear. Such a heavy word in her mouth now, so light and empty at the same time. You don't have to believe me, she added quickly. But you have to understand. I didn't want to lose you. I still don't. That was the moment I realized she still didn't get it. She thought this was about the car logs, the Bluetooth, the timestamp, the lie. But those were just symptoms. The real break happened long before tonight. You didn't lose me tonight, I said quietly. You've been losing me piece by piece for a long time. She flinched, hand covering her mouth like she could physically push the pain back in. I can fix this, she whispered. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything. I shook my head. Trust doesn't come with instructions. You can't rebuild it by force. She reached out then, slowly, resting her hand on my forearm. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean into it either. Her touch felt foreign, like someone else's wife, someone else's story. I'll go to therapy, she said. I'll cut him off. I'll quit my job if I have to. All the things she never offered before. All the things she dismissed when I asked for honesty months ago. Just don't leave, she whispered. Please don't leave. I looked at her hand on my arm, her tears, her shaking breath, and I realized something she didn't want to hear but needed to. She wasn't begging for me. She was begging not to face the consequences of what she'd done. And consequences don't disappear just because someone is afraid of them. I sat there with her hand on my arm, feeling the weight of everything she suddenly wanted to undo, everything she suddenly promised to fix, everything she realized too late. It wasn't anger burning in me anymore. It wasn't betrayal either. It was something quieter, something steadier, like standing in the doorway of a house you used to live in and realizing you don't belong there anymore. Not because someone pushed you out, but because the version of you that lived there doesn't exist. She kept whispering, "Don't leave," like the words could glue the pieces back together. But the pieces weren't just scattered. They were dust. And dust doesn't rebuild. She was shaking now, panic settling under her skin like a cold fever. "We can come back from this?" she insisted with a trembling breath. "Couples survive worse than this. People make mistakes. I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't throw us away over one mistake. One mistake." That was how she saw it. Not the lies. Not the secrecy. Not the disappearing messages. Not the gaslighting she swore was just jokes. Not the way she made me feel like the paranoid one, the insecure one, the one inventing shadows while she walked right inside them. To her, the only mistake that mattered was the one she got caught in. I finally spoke, but not with the sharpness she expected. "It wasn't one mistake," I said. "It was 1,000 small ones you thought were too small to matter." She covered her face, shoulders shaking. "I swear I never slept with him," she repeated through her fingers. "I swear to God." I nodded. "I believe you," I said. And I did. That wasn't the problem. You can tear a marriage apart without ever crossing the final line. You can break a heart with nothing but half-truths and long silences and little choices made when you think the other person will never find out. She lowered her hands and stared at me like she didn't understand what I meant. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she never would. If you believe me, she whispered, why are you still leaving? I looked out the window at the dark lake, the ripples glowing faintly under the scattered streetlights. Because trust isn't only about what you didn't do, I said. It's about what you did. She blinked, tears catching in her lashes. I can be better, she whispered. I can change. I know, I said, but I can't stay. The truth of it settled between us like a closed door. She leaned back in the seat, staring at the dashboard like she was waiting for it to give her a different version of reality. So that's it, she whispered. After everything we've been through? Everything we've been through, I said, is why I'm done. Her breath hitched. For a moment she looked furious, like she might explode the way she used to when she didn't get the reaction she wanted. But then all that fire just dissolved. She wasn't angry anymore. She was empty. Where will you go? She asked quietly. I shrugged. Enough places. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Will you ever come back? Not as the man who left, I said. She looked like she wanted to argue, to rebuild, to force hope back into the space between us. But she didn't. She finally understood that begging wouldn't change anything, and manipulation wouldn't trap me, and guilt wouldn't tie me down this time. Can I at least hug you? She asked suddenly, voice breaking like she was asking for one last breath. I thought about it. About the comfort it might give her. About the confusion it might plant in me. About the softness that might pull me into a moment that didn't match the ending we had reached. But I knew the truth. Closure is not something you get by rewinding connection. Closure is something you earn by not stepping back into the fire you just walked out of. I think it's better if we don't, I said gently. She nodded slowly, biting her lips so hard it turned white. She opened the truck door and stepped out, pausing before she closed it. Her breath fogged in the cold air. I didn't mean to lose you, she whispered. I know, I replied, but meaning doesn't erase reality. She shut the door softly and stood there for a long moment, wrapped in the streetlight glow, looking at me like she wished she could stop time. But time didn't stop. It never does. I put the truck in drive and pulled away, watching her fade in the mirror. Small, still, fragile in a way I wasn't allowed to fix anymore. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. Free in a quiet, heavy way. The kind of freedom you get after carrying something for so long you forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. As I drove home, not to our home, but to the place I had already arranged days ago, the place she didn't know about, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is walk away without slamming the door. Sometimes silence is not surrender. It's the final boundary. And sometimes trust isn't taken from you. Sometimes you give it away until there's nothing left to offer. And the only way to save what's left of yourself is to let go. If you want more stories like this, subscribe for the next one.